This afternoon. You can hear me? No. And let me first begin by begging of you leave to thank this honorable parliament for giving me another opportunity to be here, to sit in on behalf of one of my colleagues. I am always very grateful.
Can I interrupt a little bit? I think I need to indicate to senators to speak up just a little bit. We have a little bit of a mic issue. If we are to increase the volume, there would be feedback. So maybe you can project the voice just a little bit better. Thank you.
Oh, I can do that very well. Thank you, Madam President. Let me start off by extending sympathies to Senator Toussaint Shallery on the passing of her great-grandmother. And I also want to extend sympathies, I know they may not be watching right now, but to another family in the Kako area who's a very close family friend of ours who passed away last evening. I'd like to extend sympathies, right, you can hear better, to them as well. And also go with the Parliament to extend sympathies to the entire country on the passing of Sir Lytton Thomas, and also, I call him the Great because I said in a previous comment that he was one of those that I actually did admire, Senator Tom Walcott, the former chairman of the St. Lucia Labour Party. So I do extend sympathies to his family and also to the members of the St. Lucia Labour Party, and also to extend congratulations to St. Lucia and St. Lucians, our sportsmen and sportswomen, and the great achievements that we continue to achieve in sports. I also want to take this opportunity to wish every St. Lucian, I may not get that opportunity a little later, a happy independence, and I hope that the celebration and the festivities continue in the manner, albeit that I am missing, yes, but they will, I hope that they continue in the manner that they have started so far. Madam President, I rise to support, I think it's a given on this side, that we support the motion today, especially looking at why we are borrowing this money. We do have objections to borrowing money, so I will lay that on the table. But sometimes we have to understand there are certain matters that we need to take care of and we need to borrow money for. So this is one of those that I rise to support. But Madam President, just a few observations, because I really did not intend to really speak on the bill. I think it was a given, but I just want to make a few observations that many times when we come in this honorable house, we are being asked not to oppose for opposing's sake. We are being asked to be objective in how we debate the bills. But here we are, I am sitting here, and we are being criticized by members opposite. Criticisms and calling it, they say we have penance and contemplation because they hear what is coming from this side. What is this, Madam President? You are asking us to lay hands across the aisle, to agree on certain issues. We stand up and we agree on the issues. Notwithstanding, we highlight some of our concerns, and you scold us more or less to say, because we're in the Lenten season, it is penance and contemplation. It's uncalled for, Madam President. It's uncalled for. I think it should be appreciated that we try our best to be objective, to stand up here, and when the need arises for us to come across the aisle and support a motion in this house. And that is what we're trying to do. So if you don't want us to support the motion and come and oppose everything, we can do that, you know. We can find reason to oppose everything. But we're not going to do that. We're going to come into this house and we're going to be as objective as we can. Madam President, I also want to make another observation. Senator Prosper, in her presentation, she spoke about the documents, said that it is for single mothers, low. In fact, she was given a little bit more information about the program. And I don't know who perhaps to direct that concern to. But it dawned on me that many times, and the few times that I have been given the opportunity here, we're only given an order paper, and you're just given perhaps a motion that says for Parliament to borrow or to do this, etc. But we as senators on the opposite, I don't know if senators for the government side get, but we don't get any substantive information about the bills or the motions that is being debated so that we can come into this house and we can make a proper representation. So when I heard the honorable member speaking a little bit more in depth about the program, it occurred to me that perhaps if we are to come in here and to be a little bit more objective, we need to have a bit more information or documents. So most of the time what we do is to listen to the presentation made by the leader of government business. You take notes from what he's saying, and then you make your presentation based only on that. I'm not sure if that is, I'm just saying I am not sure. I understand that this is the process, but I'm not sure if it is substantive enough and fair enough to allow for there to be greater deliberations across the aisle, so that we don't come here and we just don't speak out of turn. But if we have sufficient information, we would be able to speak to those matters in a better manner. And perhaps, I don't know, as I said, who to share a concern to. It's a constructive criticism.
If I may, Senator, this is the process that the leader of government business or the senator who's presenting the motion or the bill will provide you that information. Prior to that, you can access the services of the library downstairs or call into Parliament, but the information presented here is information that most of us will receive. So that is where it is, and so you have time to access library services or call on the senators prior to coming in to ask them for more information, and that's all okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam President. But it was just a general observation on my part. Madam President, I want to speak to two matters or two concerns that were raised. And I think in general in St. Lucia, we need to stop perhaps burying our heads in the sand, and we need to call a spade a spade. And it does not necessarily mean that because we call a spade, if there is an issue or concern and we speak about it, it means that we are, quote unquote, more or less demoralizing our country or speaking bad of our country. And the reason I'm saying that is because I know Senator Police tried to tie in her discussion in terms of the security being a problem at our schools. And in order to ensure that this project is successful, security was becoming or being a concern. And so it is something that needed to be addressed. And I noticed the defensive stance of the members of the government when that matter is being spoken about, substantive to think that security is not a problem. And I thought to myself, if security is not so much of a problem, why did we hire a former police commissioner to put a security system in place for the school? So it means, and it seems to suggest that we are very much aware, and the member also indicated that.
Senator Kajiana Shalry.
Madam President, I stand on a point of order.
What's your point of order,
The Senator is misrepresenting, especially even what I said here. I do not think the note was that. I do not think that what I said was that it is not a problem. I think it was acknowledged with the discussion that there have been things put in place. So I just want the member to not misquote what was said. It's acknowledged that it is a problem, but there are things that have been put in place.
Thank you for that intervention. Proceed, Senator.
Yes, Madam President.
Yes,
so
I think we have a second.
Yes, Madam President, I do not rise on a point of order, rather I rise on a point of elucidation. If Senator...
Do you wish to yield, Senator Charles?
Can I have him do that?
No, it relates to what you just said about the security in schools. But it's misleading. Well, then...
Just do it in your report.
So it's a point of order.
Well, in that case, Madam President, it is a point of order. Basically, what Senator Charles just said is that in response to Senator Polius's comments on school security, she indicated that the opposition was displaying signs of negative reaction. Madam President, Senator Polius had her presentation there was complete silence. There was no reaction. We listened, and nobody stood on a point of order. We did not comment. The senator made her full presentation. So I don't know what it is that the government side did that caused Senator Charles to be indicating that there was any negative reaction. I believe if she's referring to our facial gestures, that's a lot of intuition. But clearly, there was no reaction. The senator had a full presentation, uninterrupted, and I think to suggest that we were reacting negatively is misleading.
Thank you for the intervention, Senator. Please proceed, Senator Charles.
Thank you, Madam President. So, Madam President, the defensive stance taken by the members opposite with reference to security, because it has been brought up.
I think
He mentioned the
Senator
word negative.
intended or attempted to put your mind at ease to indicate there was no defensive stance.
Well,
I know, Senator Charles, that both Senator Shalry Toussaint and Senator Pauline Prosper gave responses in terms of indicating what the government had put in place, etc. But Senator Gibeon is indicating that there was no defensive stance. So I think you should take it from there and move on with your presentation on the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I think sometimes when something is said, how you feel about it emotionally and how you interpret it, it's subjective to the person interpreting it. So perhaps the subjection of how the members opposite interpret and how I interpret is certainly different. So my interpretation was the fact that based on how they spoke about the matter, my interpretation that we were very defensive of it. But I stand corrected if that is not the case. However, for me, what was concerning to me was the fact that we have a security problem in schools, Madam President. I think all of us can agree on that. And the members opposite also spoke to that. To the point that we have hired a former police commissioner, and when I heard who was the person who was hired, to my mind it felt that security at schools was such a serious issue that we had to hire somebody of that caliber to put in a security program in schools. It reminded me very well of what is happening to a certain extent in Jamaica, because I do have a daughter going to school in Jamaica, and security at schools is very serious. So when I heard who was being hired to provide that type of advice, I think we're taking it to another notch, and it seems to suggest to us that it is a serious problem. But I also want to note that I saw in a news story that the same Minister of Education who speaks to the issue of school security, I think the consultant has already presented the report to the ministry, which is what he said, but he was also lamenting on the fact that he has been asking for money from his Minister of Finance for school security and have not gotten it as yet. So that also is an issue of concern for us, Madam President, that we know it's a problem. The monies are being asked for, and perhaps if there's any representative of the Ministry of Finance to say, I am also calling and lamenting on behalf of the Honorable Minister of Education, please provide the funding and some monies to the Ministry of Education to ensure that we have proper school security in our schools. So, Madam President, I also wanted to speak a little bit, maybe to clarify a little bit, because I also think that the issues that we raised about the universal secondary school education has been misinterpreted on the other side as to it is a criticism of the universal secondary school education. I don't think anybody on that side will criticize or have a criticism to say universal secondary school education was not a good thing. I grew up, fortunately for me, I was part of the era where you had those shift system, etc., and so forth. So I know a little bit about it, and I think it has been, or it was, a good thing at the time. And so the question that the Honorable Senator asked is a valid question. And why is it that he has asked that question? Because here's what we're doing today. If universal secondary school education all on its own was just a God save for every single St. Lucia and St. Lucians, we would not be debating this motion here in Parliament today. asking for monies for skills intervention in our secondary school. So it seems to suggest to us that we understand that whilst at the time we needed more access to secondary school education, we recognize today, because here's what happened, Madam President. Studies have showed, reports have showed, and lots of children, and I'm sure the Honorable Leader of Government Business can attest to that because he was the principal of a secondary school. It's not only, you do not only want to stand up in Parliament and beat your chest and say, oh, we brought universal secondary school education to St. Lucia. Every single child went to secondary school. And most or a lot of these children graduate from secondary school. Some of them cannot read, some of them cannot do basic math, some of them cannot write a letter of application, and we want to boast that every child left secondary school. That's not what it is about, and that's not what it should be about, Madam President. It should have been about that these children can attend a secondary school, but in that same breath, the secondary school can see what the need of that particular child is, because I'm sure that many educators who are here would agree that every single child learns differently. Every single child learns at different stage. And I can give you an example. I have 4 children, Madam President. The first two boys. My first son and my second son. My first son, from very early o'clock, I recognize, and Senator Ferdinand perhaps can attest to that, he was a hands-on, troublesome guy. He liked to play with things, touch things, fix things. Very early o'clock, I saw that. My second son, pure intellectual. My first son would trick him on any street smart thing that you can think about. And he was more intellectual than the first son. There were times when my first son couldn't even put a key in a door to open a lock, and my son would just do in one go. So you understand that different skills training and different children, they learn differently. So at the end of the day, what was supposed to happen when we instituted universal secondary school education was to institute a system that also allows for children who have different capabilities, who have different learning needs, children who learn differently, that we can meet them where they are. But what we did, Madam President, we blank everybody together. We just shoot them into a secondary school, in and out, like a production line. So today I am happy, I am very pleased with this motion that we have, well, the intervention started a few years ago, and I will still lament the fact that I am very disappointed that we had the Viewfort Technical School. I will always say that. We had the Viewfort Technical School. Whatever the issues were, because people felt it was stigmatized and name calling, I think we could have done better with the Viewfort Technical School than closing it down and just creating another secondary school in that area. I think we should have tried and put a system in place that allows for the children who have the technical capabilities to go to that school. So today, we are borrowing money for skills training. The only concern that I have, and I want to ask Madam President, in fact I was asking Senator, I am not too sure how it's going to be rolled out. Is it going to be applicable to every child at the tertiary level? Is it mandatory? Is it something that they have to pay for? Is it something that is just, made available to every single child, etc., etc.? Some of those, I'm hoping perhaps, I thought that the parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of Education would have given a bit more details about that in terms of the rollout, how it's going to happen, etc., but I didn't hear any of that. I'm hoping perhaps in the rebuttal the honorable member will clarify that. But I just wanted to understand how it's going to work. And I also, now that we've given the approval, and Parliament most likely will be getting the approval to borrow that money, I also want to hear a tentative date of the rollout of the program. How soon will that program be rolling out to ensure that the children, especially nowadays, Madam President, we can see what is going on and we can see what is happening with our young men and our young women right now. How soon can we roll out that program to ensure that those who need it can get access to it, and so that we can have the necessary intervention with our young people? That is all I have to say, Madam President, and thank you very much for your time.
Senator Jean.